Good morning, everybody. So we're going to talk today about if riding a motorcycle in the dark is more or less dangerous or equally dangerous than the day. So, first thing to consider when you're in the dark is visibility, obviously. And a motorcycle's got some unique visibility challenges. So for one, you've only got one headlight, or even if you have two headlights and stuff, they're very close together, right? You don't have the spread that a car does, okay? So whenever you're illuminating the world, if you are in the wrong position, say I'm here, right? There's a car coming the other way, they might literally just not be able to see me because I'm pointing a headlight, at the passenger side of another car. It's like it's too far away for them to really see. So that's something you got to consider. Like, you really got to consider your lane position even more maybe than usual. Because it's like, oh god, I suck at life. Lane position more than usual because it's harder for people to tell where you are. And similarly to that, when you're in a car from a distance, having two headlights, obviously cars are different widths. But when you have two headlights, you can kind of get a rough idea how far away somebody is based on how close those headlights are together. You get like a certain bit of depth perception, kind of like the human eye is two because of having depth perception, right? So if you have two headlights, it kind of gives you that effect as well. And it really helps people tell how fast you're going and how far away you are at night. On a motorcycle, you don't have that luxury. And motorcycles have different sized headlights, obviously, depending on the bike. So it can be pretty tricky sometimes, even as a motorcyclist, to tell kind of how far and how fast a motorcycle is going. So when it's dark out, you got to think about that, right? Like, even if you have a really good headlight and so you can see, you don't want to necessarily be closing the gap on cars that would be pulling out in front of you or, in the lane next to you too fast, because they might try to make a move and it's really hard to judge sometimes. It's funny because especially a lot of more hardcore bike people don't drive a car a lot necessarily, and so they don't actually see that side of it, which is funny, right? It's like you have this actually blind spot as the motorcyclist toward cars in the same way they might have a blind spot toward you. When I say blind spot, I mean just like not understanding how the other piece of equipment works, not a physical blind spot, right? Which you could also have. But anyway, so that's just like something to think about. And then cornering on a bike in the dark. Now, some bikes actually have these really fancy headlights that turn and kind of lift up while you corner. But the way your front forks compress and the angle of the bike, the front end just buries itself through the turn. You can actually, even if you put your high beam on, you can actually kind of lose a good amount of range through a corner. And if there were an animal or something in front of you, you might not see it. So as much as you might want to rip corners at night because there's less traffic, and like in that sense it can actually be kind of smart, and there's especially less pedestrians, you got to have just the right headlight setup or you're just not going to be able to see safely to do that. And you just have less light overall than the sun. So I'm wary of really getting after it on a curvy road at night. But I do get the appeal, and I think if you have the right headlight setup, you can probably do it safely. Just depending on where you are and how blind things are and stuff like that. But what else? Well, obviously, you inherit all the same risks of driving a car at night. Again, that visibility, your own visibility being a little bit lower. Are there more animals out at night? Maybe, sort of. I would say yes. However, really dawn and dusk are when deer and stuff like that get moving in most places. So I would say if you're real deep into the night, your animal risk is going to be decent. It's going to be okay. So this is a perfect example, right? There's cars pulling in here, and they might not really be able to tell how fast I'm going. Now, I had plenty of shoulder in case somebody pulled out in front of me. And it's a clean shoulder, and I know the road, so I didn't really slow down too much. But something to consider if you're, doing even something like that. A car might just be like, oh, I can get in slow lane. He's not coming that quick, but I am. I'm going the speed limit, and I plus a little bit, and they're not even up to speed yet. So anyway, yeah, animal-wise, I hate to say it, this time of day is kind of the worst. The sun's like just starting to crack. The starting to come up. And, that's where you're really probably the most danger for animal movement. I mean, that's when hunters are usually out to, try to get their kill. So it's definitely a common time for animal movement. But, and again, you can modulate that with good headlight and lowering your speed. That can definitely help. And the one thing I will say is, and don't quote me on this, but I feel like a lot of times animals, and I'm kind of talking deer because that's the big thing that you're probably going to run into in this state. I feel like they don't do as much of the random, like, I'm going to run across the street right now, this early in the morning. They kind of just, a lot of times they tend to, just be kind of out there, stroll across, or just be standing in the way. Maybe a little bit more predictable. I'm not like super passionate about that opinion. I don't know. I feel like a lot of deer are whacked during the day, or like again, dusk or dawn. When they're just like that, they pop out of nowhere. Like that deer that I hit this year, just middle of the day, summertime, dude just pops out of nowhere. Like nothing you were gonna do about that situation other than freaking ride the lightning on it and just hope that the timing's good enough that you don't go down on the bike, which thank God I didn't. But yeah, and then the big one that we'll touch on is obviously drunk drivers. So that's a tough one. I mean, Friday, Saturday nights obviously are going to be your peak drunk driving holidays. That's tough because that's like the deer. It's a crazy oddball. So I read some stat somewhere. I think it was from a YouTube channel or something. Yeah, they had proof in the comments or whatever, but I'm gonna butcher it. But something to the effect of like 2/3 of all motorcycle accidents are a result of alcohol is involved on the rider's side. So the rider themselves has drank alcohol, and then the accidents happen. Now it's an interesting stat because most people are drinking alcohol at night or the sun goes down. So does that stat mean that the alcohol was the factor, like the main factor, the only factor? Or could the lack of daylight been some of the factor, or just tiredness because later in the day? I mean, it all makes you wonder. Like, regardless, let's be honest, we know that alcohol is a factor in your level of driving impairment. That's no secret. So for your own sake as a motorcyclist, and I try to live by this principle, and it's tough, but oh god, my phone's falling out of my mouth. How the heck is that happening? That was weird. Never really happened before. So I really actually, as a motorcyclist, try to live by this principle that I just don't drink while on the bike. Honestly, I'll do one beer. I'll pretty much do one beer no matter what, especially but I'm talking a light beer, like a Miller Lite or whatever. Like, I want low alcohol percentage where I'm practically drinking water. It might be it. Dangers of riding at night. I think I pretty much summed it up. Oh, there's one last thing I wanted to say. Similar effect to the headlights with perspective pulling out in front of you. Brake lights. Only having that one brake light, definitely a noticeable disadvantage, right? There's something very attention grabbing about 2 full brake lights on a car and the third brake light. And it's really at night it's nice. That third brake light is totally off, and then when you hit the brakes it goes fully on, right? So you have that really good contrast of nothing to full red light. So that's always a nice, oh gosh, what are we doing, my friend? Okay. I would normally try to wait for him, but I don't want to get rear-ended. That's the other thing, like on a motorcycle, just in general, but especially at night. And with that, God bless America. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Goodbye.